AITA for yelling at my teacher after she took my cochlear implants in class and ignored my explanation? I'm 17 and I'm deaf. My family is hearing, so I use both American Sign Language, ASL, at home and speech to communicate in school. I also have cochlear implants, CEIs, which I've had since I was 9. I mostly use them when I'm in school or out with hearing friends who don't sign. So I thought it would be helpful to explain some background first before I get into the issue. I've always been one of those kids who tried to make the best of a tough situation. Growing up deaf in a hearing family was challenging. It wasn't just the physical barriers of not being able to hear what others heard. It was also the social aspect. I couldn't join conversations the way others did, and school was no exception. But my parents were always supportive, even going above and beyond to make sure I had the tools I needed to succeed. That's where my cochlear implants come in. Without them, I wouldn't be able to hear much at all, especially in an environment like school. I go to a regular high school, not a specialized one for kids with disabilities, so accessibility is a bit of a problem. My school isn't really equipped to deal with my needs as a deaf student, and I've had to learn to adapt in a lot of ways. One of the things that's been crucial for me is wearing a beanie that covers my cochlear implant transmitter during class. The part that hooks onto my ear is visible, but it's not like regular earphones or anything that could be mistaken for a distraction in class. The beanie is more than just a fashion choice for me. It's a necessity. The transmitter that connects to my cochlear implants sits just behind my ear and sticks out enough to be noticeable, especially in a crowded classroom. I wear the beanie to cover it so that people don't stare at it or ask unnecessary questions. It helps me feel normal, or at least like I'm blending in more. It's not that I'm ashamed of my CIs. On the contrary, I'm grateful for them. But I've learned the hard way that people can be a little too curious, sometimes to the point of being rude. So, the beanie just helps me focus on my work without having to worry about explaining myself. Now, I've had this set up for years, and usually my teachers are pretty understanding about my cochlear implants. They know I use them to hear the lessons and to follow what's going on. I've had no problems with any teacher in the past. But yesterday, everything changed. We had a substitute teacher. I didn't know her, and she didn't know me. I was wearing my beanie to cover my CI's transmitter, as usual, and I guess she didn't notice at first. Everything was fine at the start. I was doing some assignments, just like any other day. My classmates were doing their own work, the room was quiet, and I was focused on what I had to do. That's when Mrs. K, the substitute teacher, came up to my desk. I noticed she had this sort of puzzled look on her face as she got closer to my desk. She seemed to be staring at the part of my CEI that was visible on my ear. I didn't think anything of it at first, but then she asked, "What are those things in your ears? Are you listening to music?" I wasn't sure why she assumed they were headphones, but I calmly replied, "No, those are cochlear implants. They help me hear what's going on in class." At that moment, I didn't realize how much tension was building up inside me. I thought this was just another misunderstanding that could be quickly cleared up. I explained to her that I needed them to hear her voice and the lesson. I took off my beanie to show her the transmitter, hoping that would clear things up. But, to my surprise, she just stood there and stared at me like I was making excuses. "I don't care what you say," she said, her voice almost cold. "You need to take those off. They're not allowed in class." I felt a pit form in my stomach. My CIs are not just a luxury. They're essential. They're a lifeline that allows me to function in an environment that's not built for someone like me. If she took them off, I'd be completely cut off. I wouldn't be able to hear the lesson, and I wouldn't be able to communicate. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was pounding in my chest. "Please, you can't take them," I said, trying to reason with her. "These are medical devices, not music devices. I really need them." She wasn't having any of it. She looked at me like I was just another student trying to pull a fast one. "I don't believe you," she said, before reaching out to take them off. In that moment, I felt a rush of panic. I knew I couldn't let her take them. I slapped her hands away, almost without thinking. My instincts kicked in, and I stood up from my desk. I felt a wave of heat flood my face, and I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. Ironically, I wasn't even hearing that well without my implants. I started lecturing her, telling her she had no right to touch my CIs, that they were an essential part of my hearing. "You can't take them," I said firmly. "These are part of my ability to hear and function in this class. You can't just take them away." I was shaking, not just out of anger, but out of fear. I feared for the safety of my cochlear implants. I feared what might happen if she damaged them. It wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was a matter of my basic ability to participate in school. I couldn't just sit there and let her take them. She stepped back, seemingly taken aback by my reaction, and I thought the situation was over. I sat back down, trying to catch my breath. But then a few minutes later, she did something that completely caught me off guard. Mrs. K came up from behind me. I didn't hear her approaching, and before I could react, she grabbed my cochlear implants off my head. I stood up again, this time not just angry, but absolutely terrified. "Give them back," I yelled. "You can't just take them." My voice cracked as I said it, but I couldn't hold back. I grabbed her hands, trying to get my sea ice back, but she held on tight. I wasn't thinking about anything except the fact that she had my hearing devices and wouldn't give them back. My heart was racing, and I could feel tears starting to well up. The classroom fell silent. I could feel all eyes on me, but I didn't care. I wasn't about to let her break my sea ice. I knew that without them, I would have no way to hear the lesson or communicate with anyone. She finally released them and handed them back, but it didn't feel like a victory. I was still shaken, and the adrenaline in my body hadn't worn off. I had no idea what to do next, but I knew I needed help. Mrs. K called the principal, and I felt my stomach drop. I couldn't hear much of the conversation, but I could tell things were escalating. When the principal arrived, I immediately told him what happened. "She took my cochlear implants," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "She wouldn't give them back." The principal looked at me, then at Mrs. K, then back at me. He didn't say much at first, just a quiet, "Let's go to my office and talk about this." Long story short, I got my sea ice back, but I was suspended for putting my hands on a staff member. The principal told me that my reaction was inappropriate, and while he understood why I was upset, I shouldn't have gotten physical with the teacher. I get it. In hindsight, I know that's not the best way to handle things. But in the heat of the moment, I just panicked. When I got home, my dad was furious. He wanted to report Mrs. K to the administration, and he made it clear he wasn't letting this go. He feels that no teacher, no matter who they are, should treat me like that. And honestly, I agree with him. But I'm still wondering, did I overreact? Was I wrong to yell and try to physically stop her? I know I shouldn't have gotten physical, but at the same time, my cochlear implants are a huge part of my life. So, Reddit, AITA for how I reacted? Should I have handled things differently?